So I've quite openly talked about on this channel my dislike for Star Wars. But with that being said, I will admit there are good things about Star Wars. Just like with Game of Thrones, here are 10 things I like about Star Wars. Starting with, as I've talked about before, the world building. Not the most incredible, but still, the world building in Star Wars is pretty good. You have all these alien planets, starts out with just Tatooine. You slowly learn more about Tatooine as you go, and then you go off the planet and you learn about other planets. The original trilogy just slowly builds up different worlds, and it's kind of fun. Also liking the whole space part about it. I'm not as much a science fiction person, but in the same way, it's kind of a cool concept. Star Wars, it's wars in space, and it was fun. The aliens are cool. The world building in Star Wars are pretty fun. I can understand why people like Star Wars because of this. The world it's set in. It's a pretty fun world to spend some time in. The next one is the music. Not my favorite music, but still, that's an epic song to march to. That's an epic song to have a battle to. That's an epic song to have a sword fight to. There are moments. I have a playlist on Spotify that's just battle music, and Star Wars is a part of that battle music because there are some songs that are fun to fake fight to because it's just fun music. I can't ignore that. The next one is the cinematography. Again, one of these movies are not the greatest. There are some shots that should be looked at on how to properly film movies. There are just the cinematography in some of these scenes, as I'm going to talk about in the later part of the video. Star Wars changed cinema. I can't ignore that. The cinematography in this has some great moments and should be looked at on how to properly make films. The next one is the battles. Not all of them, but there are plenty of scenes, when Luke destroys the Death Star for the first time. The opening of Revenge of the Sith. I remember the first time I watched Revenge of the Sith, I was like, the opening was like this. I'm like, oh, this is what Star Wars is meant to be. That whole battle scene was like, when I hear Star Wars, that's what I think of. That's what Star Wars is supposed to look like. There are other battles too. Yeah, the battle on the snow planet in The Empire Strikes Back. Anakin Skywalker and Kenobi on Mustafar. All these, the one-on-one fights are great too. There are great fights in this. Next one, on that same topic, dealing with the Darth Vader Luke's fight. Well, it wasn't my favorite, to be honest, but the reveal that Darth Vader is Luke's father. Iconic. It's just an iconic line. Everyone says it, but in the same way, it's I wish I could be back in the 80s when that came out and just have that reveal, Luke, I am his father, because I grew up knowing that already. But it's something crazy about the idea of Luke, I am your father. It's just one of the biggest plot twists. I don't know. I also just love those storylines where you have people figure out who their parentage is and oh my goodness, what? So I don't know. I thought it was a cool moment. Just flips the whole story. He ends that movie with this complete change of who he thinks his father is, who he is. He lost his hand, and now he's my father is the villain. What? It's that was a great storyline, great ending to that movie. Still not my favorite. I don't think they executed it well, but in the same way, I like it. The next one is Han Solo. As a character, the first time I watched Star Wars, I wasn't that big of a fan of Han Solo. I thought he was cool, he was swag. I don't know. But then I watched Star Wars again, and I was like, okay, I do kind of like Han Solo. He's one of the few characters I like in the original trilogy. He's I don't know, man, just Harrison Ford being Harrison Ford. He's a fun character. I actually found it kind of funny because I was thinking about if I was ever in a situation where someone told me I love you and all, there would be a part of me. My response would be something I know, or me too, something like that. And then I realized I feel I recognize that from somewhere, and I'm Star Wars. That's where that comes from. I can't say I have the same personality as Han Solo, but in the same way, I love it how when I thought of that idea, the first thing that popped in my head was the idea of just saying, I know, just I don't blame you. I would too. Just being for myself. And then I'm oh, that came from Star Wars. I'm hey, that's a cool thing. But yeah, I like Han Solo as a character. The next one is the Force itself. I may not be a fan of Star Wars. I can't help sometimes being wow, moving stuff with my mind. The idea of doing something like that is fun. I am a nerd, not a geek, so I'm not as much into cosplay, stuff like that. But in the same way, I can see why some people might want to cosplay as these characters. I'm a full-grown adult, and even sometimes when I'm exiting a store, I'm oh, in my mind, just like, I still stand by. One of my favorite moments from Star Wars altogether, and like a moment like that is an awesome moment, was when Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, first arrives on Mustafar, and he just walks in that room, says nothing, just close door, of course he just pulls out his lightsaber and just kills everyone. Best moment ever. There's a parody on Let It Go on YouTube called Let It Flow.
Power passes through the air to close the door. My deadly lightsaber will help your body meet the floor.
I just love that verse. I always like to say, I don't like Star Wars, but if I was given the opportunity to star in a Star Wars movie, I would be thrilled to do it. It seems like it would be such a fun movie to be in, but I'm not a fan. But I'll be like, give me a chance to, you know, put on a hood, be like, just kill one. That would be so much fun. That would be a fun movie to film. I would have so much fun in those scenes. But I'm not a fan of Star Wars. On that same note, you also had the lightsaber itself. The lightsabers are super cool. I'm personally more of a fan of a sword. But in the same way, just what a lightsaber is just such a cool, like, I can't help it. It is built into myself as a human to just be like, that's super cool. And me just making those noises and just like, the inner child can't get away from just liking something like that. It's like something shiny for people. I mean, it's just like, gimme. It's just like something about just, like, and it's not even just like playing like, yeah, you can like boom, 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 with like, hey, you can like sword fight, but there's something cool about the being able to make those noises. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Just something cool about that I can't help but enjoy. As an adult, I don't really play with lightsabers anymore, but in the same way, like, I remember being a kid, those like fold-out lightsabers, and you just like, I would go to a friend's house and they would have fold-out lightsabers, and we would pull out the lightsabers and then we would just and just like have so much fun. Even more than just the toys, because this is really just about the movies we're talking about. Like, the movies, the lightsabers, the idea of lightsabers in the movies are pretty cool too, and I like it how it's an ingenious way to chop off limbs in movies without it becoming R-rated gruesomeness, because it automatically closes the wound so it doesn't bleed out. So it's not a bunch of blood, because this light is just cutting through it, burns it shut. Ingenious way to keep it PG-13 or PG. The next one is one of the big ones that a lot of people my age wouldn't think it's as much of a shocking thing, but people who are older will really hate me for this, but the prequels. I personally do not like the originals, and like everyone who has enough brain cells, the sequels, I know the sequels are terrible too. I don't like the sequels. But the prequels, there are a lot of reasons. I'll bring up more in my point that I'm about to bring up next. But like, the prequels came out when I was a kid. I grew up with the prequels. So for me, the prequels is what I think of when I think of Star Wars. The clones, you know what I mean? All those are Star Wars for me, not the original. My father, he grew up with the originals, and so for him, he's the only one in my family who's actually a fan of Star Wars at all. And I kind of feel bad for him, because like, he never gets to watch Star Wars because no one else in the family wants to watch it, because they're like, okay, we don't like this. He remember watching them when they first came out in theaters as the 70s kid and all. And so, yeah. So like, for me, it's like the prequels. When I watched the originals, I'm like, oh, okay. When I watched the prequels, I'm like, this is Star Wars to me. This is what Star Wars is meant to be. Unlike the original, felt like the first one was a standalone movie that was just supposed to be one movie, Star Wars. That was always supposed to be one movie. Then they made a sequel, and I'm like, it felt like a forced sequel. Everyone thinks Empire Strikes Back is the best. I don't think so. And then The Return of the Jedi is just, in my opinion, one of the worst Star Wars movies, with just not knowing where it was going. It's like the whole original trilogy, in my opinion, felt like it was never supposed to go more than one movie. And all three of those movies, when you watch them together, they're like, I don't know. It felt like they didn't know where they were going with these. Not as much as the sequels. Of course, the sequels are just absolutely bonkers. But then you have the prequels. The prequels, well, by the end, you had at least the fact that when the prequels were started, he knew exactly where he was going with these. And so every scene, every moment in the prequels felt like it was leading up to Anakin becoming Darth Vader. And it does a terrible job with it, but I can't help but love it. An honorable mention, because really this doesn't have to do with movies, but just I wanted to mention it because when I think of Star Wars, I think of this, and that is Legos. Star Wars Legos are just, as I said, I grew up with the prequels. I grew up with Lego Star Wars. That's my introduction to Star Wars, was Lego Star Wars, the Lego prequels. You know that, I don't know if anyone else remembers that clip where it's like, I can't see them where'd they go? Whoa! You know, that clip? Just that when I think of Star Wars, I think of that clip. I'm gonna see if I can find it. That is my Star Wars. That is what Star Wars is for me. Yeah, man. But yeah, that's my honorable mention. The last one I'm gonna mention is the big one. As I said before, Star Wars did change cinema a lot. Someone explained it to me once, where they were like just mentioning the fact of like, because I was like, why? Like, I don't like Star Wars, and this guy was like, okay, well, honestly, I agree with you somewhat that Star Wars is not the most well put together story, you know. It's like, and so I'm like, thank you. I'm glad someone else can see that, but. Like, he was a very intelligent person. He's like, yeah, I agree with you. From an actual like story standpoint, from all this other standpoint, Star Wars isn't that great. But he's like, the big thing that makes a lot of people like me love Star Wars is the fact of when the original trilogy came out, they used the highest technologies they could come up with to make these movies. When the prequels came out, it was the first thing with CGI. The CGI was just getting started. Does every shot in the prequels still look good today? No, but in the same way, like it was like the highest form of CGI. When the sequel trilogy came out, it used the best CGI it could find. I mean, it's a spectacle. Star Wars is a spectacle. It's less of a great story as much as a spectacle. And you know, I'm like, after I saw that, I'm like, I had a little more respect for Star Wars after he mentioned that. I'm like, I never thought about it that way, but yeah, that's the case. That like I have now respect for Star Wars from that standpoint. On that point is like also you just know Star Wars in general. Again, one of the first series to ever use CGI. When the original trilogy came out, when that first movie was just like a game changer in filmmaking. The technology, the way they shot stuff is just incredible. And we will never have got some of these movies we got if it wasn't for George Lucas just pushing those people to be like, hey, let's push our limits. Let's push it to what we can. Let's use these models. Let's invent CGI. Let's do all this different incredible stuff. Like Star Wars is incredible. Like Star Wars was not fully the only ones, but I mean, they were really big on pushing for better technology when it came to filmmaking with CGI, different methods of filming. Just I had to give that to Star Wars. So overall, again, this doesn't change my opinion on Star Wars. I still hate Star Wars. I'm going to continue trying to put out videos every once in a while on stuff I like about Star Wars. Or, I mean, I'm kind of tempted to put out a video because one of my biggest videos is on how Darth Vader is a terrible villain. I kind of want to prove my point that I was making on my video on how opinions really shape what you think is correct. And so I want to put out a video saying, okay, let's take the same scene that I said, this is why Darth Vader is a terrible villain. And let's take that scene and let me now try to come up with reasons so I can say, this is why Darth Vader is such a great villain. And show the fact of, yeah, exactly what I was pointing out there. I don't like Star Wars, so I watched that scene. I'm like, yeah, this is what makes Darth Vader such a terrible villain. But I'm like, let's see. What if I take it from the other angle? And hopefully I'll get to that video sometime and be able to like, hey, this is why Darth Vader is such a great villain. Even that I hate him. I'm not going to mention that until the end of the video. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to be like, guess what? I actually don't agree with this. But in the same way, proving that point. But anyways, so yeah, this doesn't change my opinion on Star Wars, but I want to try to find ways to positively talk about Star Wars sometimes just to prove that I can get, just to be like, okay, let me put aside my opinions and let me just say from a writing standpoint, this is where it works. Like, let me just, I can't fully put away my opinions because my opinions do shape me, but in the same way, again, this video, these are some things I like about Star Wars. I still don't like the series, but I don't know. I couldn't help it. Couldn't help but find the Force intriguing, lightsabers cool, some fight scenes awesome. I mean, there's some stuff in Star Wars I can't help but kind of like, even that I would if anyone asked me, how would you put Star Wars? I would say Star Wars is a 1 out of 10. It's bad. But in the same way, some things I like about Star Wars. So guys, tell me your thoughts below. I know I'm probably going to get a bunch of negative comments because Star Wars fans are the greatest at being nice to people. With that being said, try to be kind to people. Got it? Okay, thank you guys for watching. This has been the Movie Night Reviewer. Peter Wary, signing off.